and our community as a whole is this event, this community that we are ever expanding. And it all started as a panel and a cocktail hour in a small conference center type room with maybe about 30 LBT women. And it was originally called Women at Ramba, or what we called WAR. That soon decided very quickly to rebrand that to Out Women in Business, as you can all see. But and it's exciting to see how it's grown today and seeing so many of your amazing faces today. So thank you for joining us. It's been a particularly difficult year on so many dimensions. And for me personally, one of the most difficult years in my life. And these types of communities are so important, more now than ever, to lean on each other, to help you stand up loud and proud, regardless of the situation. And so I hope that you get energy and lots of positive vibes out of engaging with the community today. I do want to acknowledge that it takes a village to put together an event like this. So I want to take the time to thank our amazing organizers for their hard work and dedication in putting this event together for you today. So Tal, Julia, Daniela, Petra, and Danielle, thank you for the energy and passion that you've put into this and giving back to our community and creating this space for us to connect. Additionally, I want to give special thank you to this year's corporate partners who have made this event possible, as well as our national sponsors, BCG, Deloitte, Discover, and Federal Reserve System, Wells Fargo, and last but definitely not least, the company I work for, McKinsey & Company. It's an incredible, the continued level of support that these companies have provided to reaching out, and specifically excited in their investment in the LBT community. We are thrilled to bring you a diverse and dynamic agenda today that includes some great educational content, opportunities for you to get to know each other better, and new this year, a recruiting session where you can meet with sponsoring company reps from, I believe it's 3:20 to 4 p.m. Eastern. To access those company booths, please click on the exhibitors, find the company you want to talk to, and click to enter the expo booth. You may also check out all of our corporate partner exhibitor pages for info about them and possible recruitment opportunities. So with that, now it's my pleasure to introduce Tracy Hedrick, Vice President of Card Operations for the Phoenix Operations Center of Discover Financial Services. In her 30 years at the company, she's been deeply involved in Discover's employee resource groups, professional women impacting results, and Pride, which supports local LGBT initiatives and understanding. So please help me welcome Tracy and sending you all lots of strength, stay safe and healthy. And so with that, Tracy.
Thank you, Hannah. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Discover, I want to welcome you to the event. Discover is proud to be a corporate sponsor of Out Women in Business. This is our third year, and we are also very excited to support Reaching Out MBA overall. This is just such a great opportunity to engage. There are so many corporate sponsors here, and like all of those, Discover believes in the power of equity and inclusion and what it brings to the workplace and to our communities. And so today is a chance to really live into that. Hannah shared that things are very challenging right now. So it's really critical that organizations like Discover show up and really lean into opportunities like today. It's just so exciting to be here. I had not heard, Hannah, that originally it was going to be war. So I can understand how the naming got changed. But 30 years ago, when I started my career, I couldn't have imagined a day like today. And so I'm thrilled to be here. This is one of the dates I circle on my calendar and really look forward to. And so I'm hoping today that I can make some real connections with some of you and really build my community. And I encourage you to do the same. This is such a special day. Join the sessions, make connections, build your community. That's what today is about. I'm excited to see what they hold. So I'm ready to get started. So with that said, I want to personally thank you for the opportunity to participate in Out Women in Business. And let's get started.
Great, thank you so much, Tracy. Really appreciate your remarks. So my name is Jordan Summers. I'm the program manager for Reaching Out MBA, and I'm so excited to be here with you all. It's one of my favorite events. It's a Friday, the sun's kind of shining where I am, so very excited for all that's gonna happen today. I wanted to just first of all say thank you to Danielle. She is unable to moderate the session today, so I'll be taking her place and try and do her hard work justice. But let's get started. We have a great opening session viewed from the top, perspectives of women in charge. We will do some Q&A with our panelists, and then at the end we'll do some questions with the panelists, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. I'll ask you to raise your hand and come off of mute and ask your question. So let me do a brief intro for our panelists. First, we have Juliette Marie Somerset. She is a Silicon Valley leadership executive and startup advisor, an early stage investor dedicated to accelerating innovation and breakthrough technology. She is CEO and managing partner at Somerset Capital. She is also a consultant operating at a senior level with global game-changing tech founders, innovative startups, and angel investors. Her specialties include fintech, cryptocurrency and blockchain, and social impact. She currently mentors with the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, CVVC, Parallel 18, and Norskin Impact Accelerator. In addition, she is on the board of directors and board of advisors of global tech and investment companies and is a guest lecturer at ESCP Business School in Berlin. Next, we have Tamara Peterson, who was managing counsel in the Minneapolis office for the Wells Fargo legal department, where she leads a team of providing legal support to the bank's wealth management business. Since joining Wells Fargo from private practice, she has held various business and legal roles and has been active in the community's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, including serving as the enterprise president of the Pride Employee Network and in leadership roles for the legal department Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. She and her wife, Denise, enjoy spoiling their rescue dog and boating in their free time. And then finally, we have Jen Deloyd, who is vice president at Capital One, who recently transitioned from corporate strategy to leading payments and customer experience for the retail and direct bank. Jen has broad experience as a strategist, operator, and executive, having spent over 10 years at McKinsey & Company. She has held executive positions during the early growth stages of tech companies like Groupon and Main Street Hub / GoDaddy, and has worked in the office of the CEO and board at Bridgewater, the world's largest hedge fund. She lives in Connecticut with her wife, Julie, who is Chief Activation Officer for toy company Melissa and Doug and their 2 children. So thank you, panelists. Glad to have you here. So let's start off with the first question. What does leadership mean to you? How has your inherent identity as an LBT woman served you as a leader? Anyone's free to start.
I'm happy to start. Hey everyone, welcome. Great to see your faces. Obviously sad we can't all be in the same place, but have enjoyed coming to these kind of events for many years and look forward to when we get to have them. But I'm always impressed by how we persevere and are resilient and make these things happen. So thank you all for contributing to that. Leadership is funny, or a definition of it is funny. It's something I reflect on a lot. I think the thing that I've gotten most fond of when I think about defining leadership is the idea that leadership is about accomplishing goals through others. So a person who can sort of marshal humans to achieve particular ends is a leader. And a great leader is someone who can do that day in, day out, year after year in a wide variety of circumstances. The last year in particular being an interesting set of them that I think has challenged and in many ways changed what leadership means. And I like that definition because it's a very human and social one. It's all dependent or really stems from understanding your fellow workers and the relationship of their individual goals to a group goal, and how to essentially accomplish the group goal through means of the individual goals. And I like that definition because to me it captures the essence of what leadership is, but leaves a lot of flexibility on the how. So the what to me is all about the ability to empathize, the ability to synthesize, visualize, and mobilize. Those are all pretty critical, but it leaves a lot of what I think of as style factors. So are you more formal or casual? Are you more extroverted or introverted? Any any of those combinations can be successful in accomplishing those things. So.
This is Tamara. I'm happy to join in the conversation, and I want to just say good afternoon and thanks, Jordan, and to Out Women in Business for inviting me to join in the conversation. Really like what Jen said about a definition. I was thinking about leadership sort of from a personal perspective and how that's changed for me through my career. You know, I think at the outset when I first started practicing law, you know, I was just focused on doing a good job, right? And being accountable for matters. And I don't know that I was really thinking about myself from a leadership perspective until I had a little bit more clout in my firm and then later in the business as I moved into a role with a company. And I think, you know, it was at that point I really started to understand, as I had the ability to do more and take on more, that the good work and sort of delivering what's expected is table stakes. It's not a lot more than that. And there's a lot more room to do more and be more. And, you know, I think when I started looking at leading and what that involvement looked like for me, it was taking on matters and working on matters that really incorporated a broader view, taking on responsibility beyond what was immediately in front of me and thinking of beyond what maybe that role had traditionally called for. Frankly, it was pushing and demonstrating courage in bringing forward new perspectives, or even, you know, admitting when you don't know something, which can be hard, especially as you're getting started in your career. That's a really uncomfortable place to be. But I promise you, it's important to recognize when that happens. And what was interesting to me as I was thinking about the question is none of those actions, right, really relate to managing people, because you don't have to manage people to be a leader. I think we would all agree you can lead with or without responsibility for or accountability for others. And today, you know, in a role as a manager, there's still a lot of ways in which leadership isn't about managing the team, right? It's about getting the right people in the room, which often means recognizing I'm not the right person, or I'm not the person with all the answers, figuring out who's missing, figuring out whose voice hasn't been heard and finding a way to bring that voice into the room so the diversity of thought exists. And then as a manager, I think from a leadership perspective, it is about making sure that I'm bringing my team along, challenging them to cross-train and develop, and really helping them understand how to use their voices effectively, how to make sure they understand the impact of their voices, even when they're an individual contributor, or especially as an individual contributor. The question, Jordan, you asked about the inherent sort of LBT identity, I've thought about that as my leadership has evolved through the years, and I think I'm probably a bit more strategic and flexible, which I think are skills that relate to navigating my identity in a workplace for a number of years. And I would say as well, you know, I think it's been important to me to be out and visible. That's a critical aspect for me of how I show up and show out as a leader. I'm not comfortable necessarily being the same, I'm comfortable not being the same. And I think that also for me ties to this idea of authenticity in leadership. And we see more and more today, not only authenticity in our leaders, but an expectation of authenticity in companies, right? Is what you're doing as a company lining up to what you say as a company? And there's a lot of accountability around that. And, you know, for me, authenticity, vulnerability kind of go hand in hand. Those are important for developing relationships, credibility. And I will just say, as a woman who occasionally is known for getting a little teary-eyed, probably a little easier than some, I've gotten much more comfortable that emotion and passion aren't necessarily things to be avoided. They have their place. And demonstrating that, you know, that you care and that you're engaged, I think is really a foundational piece to good leadership. So I'll stop there.
Well, hello, and thank you for this marvelous invitation. When I look back on my career, I started on Wall Street for working as an investment banker for Credit Suisse. And this is where leadership started for me. I started watching the CEOs of these Wall Street Titan companies. And I started watching how they led. And because when I started my career on Wall Street, it was a career of, for a lot of men. There were very few women on Wall Street as executives, as leaders. And there were two marvelous women who took me under their wings. And they taught me what it's like to be a female leader, what it's like to be a mother. And they taught me how to balance the two. And the CEOs of Credit Suisse and JP Morgan and all those banks, they weren't doing that at the time. And now that I look at Wall Street now, one of the greatest persons who's my mentor and hero is David Sullivan at Goldman Sachs. And I just love David. I love him because he is challenging Wall Street. He's challenging the financial community. He's telling them, I'm not taking your company IPO unless you have diversity on your board. He's telling people that, diversity isn't just having one woman on the board. Diversity is having someone who is part of our LGBTQ community. And diversity is expanding that understanding of womanhood. You can be a cisgender woman. You can be a transgender woman. But you must have a seat on that board. That's leadership.
Those are great words, Juliette Marie. Thank you. So you all are involved in some measure with employee resource groups and LGBT plus focused organizations. So what I wanted to ask next was how do you support and foster specifically LGBT women and other underrepresented groups at work? Let's start with Juliette Marie.
Well, here in Silicon Valley, we have a phrase among women in leadership here. And we always talk about, we may become the CEOs, we may become the managing directors, we may sit on the board, but we often talk in my group of women who lead here in Silicon Valley, we talk about sending the elevator down. We've made it to the top. We're in the C-suite. We're on the board of directors. But we're also obliged to send that elevator back down for others. And I think it's a wonderful way to foster solidarity. And it's one way to foster mentorship. And it's a way of realizing that the path that got me to the C-suite, the path that got me as an executive leader here in Silicon Valley may not be the same path for someone who hasn't gone to Yale, who hasn't gone to Columbia, and that's when I think about the underrepresented communities. I was fortunate when I transitioned. I had enormous support, but that's not the case for every woman who transitions or every man who transitions. So I'm very mindful that my path to leadership may not be the same path of others, but I must be in solidarity with others who will become leaders and who will come up in the elevator once I send it back down.
That's great. I really love the idea of pulling others up alongside you or with you. That's great. Jenna, do you want to go next?
Yeah, no, I that resonates a lot with me too. I think So I've been involved in diversity, recruiting, and professional development efforts for almost 20 years now, which is a little scary to think about. And it's been interesting to see how the sort of access and opportunity I have to affect change has grown or shifted really in ways as I've progressed at the organizations that I've been a part of. And so it's something that's always been on my mind. And I think it's been a bit of what's the tool in the tool belt that I am best and perhaps uniquely positioned to implement in this situation to sort of affect the impact. For a long time, it was, going to campuses and talking to candidates and telling my story and getting involved in interviewing. And that is critical on the ground activity. You've got to have it at all levels, right? And most recently, I realized almost accidentally, I was in a conversation yesterday with my manager, who's a senior executive at the company. And it was the second time in a couple of weeks where he had pulled me aside, straight white male, and basically said, look, I want to pick your brain. I'm struggling with how to have this conversation, or I'm struggling with how to lead in this way. I'm struggling with whether it's a response to the horrific events of Atlanta or other topics that have come up. And I sort of realized yesterday in the middle of the conversation, I was like, oh, this is the best way I can affect change right now, is I can essentially be a consigliere to the folks in the organization who are in positions of influence and in positions of power, even more so than me. And help guide them and help make them feel empowered and help hold them accountable. And it was kind of a funny realization to have, and one that I really value, that I'm at a place where, at a place and time in the world where that's how leaders are thinking and that's what they're struggling with. And almost an even bigger responsibility in terms of just the ripple effects of that and how many people that can start to, touch and influence. So I've tried to be a little bit more cognizant of sort of what are my windows of opportunity and how do I make the most of them when I get them. So that's a reflection I've been having later on in my career that it's been interesting. And I mean, aside from that and my own personal experience, I think the other thing that has gotten increasingly important to me and increasingly, I think, important in the world is making sure that not only am I thinking at an individual level, what role am I playing, what opportunity am I creating, how am I having impact, but how am I sort of like finding the leverage in that by the employer I choose to work for or by, the organizations I choose to be a part of, and what are the things that I'm contributing my time, money, effort to? How is that kind of having rippling and compounding effects out in the world? And I think in particular on the employer side, I think the bar has been raised. It's been raised in small ways for a long time through the hard efforts of lots of folks like those who organize these events and are on this call. But I think it's, in the last year in particular, been a fundamental shift in expectations. And I think we all have a lot more power than we ever thought we realized to hold our employers accountable and to be thoughtful about the choices we make as consumers, as workers and laborers in the world. And I reflect on that a lot day to day too.
That's great, thank you. Tamara?
Yeah, so for me, I think about maybe showing up in a couple of different ways for supporting other LBT individuals. And first, it's around my own kind of workspace, right? My team, sort of the willingness, and for me, the mandate to be visible, to be open and honest about my relationship, about my diversity, because I'm cisgender and present pretty feminine. It's really important to me to actually speak and account as a visible member of the LGBTQ community. So I regularly speak about my wife in conversations. I've always had pictures of us on my desk, and there's one behind me. I can see in the video on the armoire back there that I like to keep those things around and make sure that I am sharing and speaking up and really educating about my experience and talking about the legal landscape for our community, which I'm particularly attuned to. really encouraging allyship and learning, and trying to make sure that others see that there's a place for them, right, in the workspace, that they feel like it's safe to bring themselves to the job in the same way that I'm doing every day, just by being visible and speaking very openly. And I would add, I think, you know, Jen, to your comments in particular about what's been happening in the last year, you know, continuing to do my own learning about the diversity within our community and the diversity within society more broadly is really important, and brings some credibility to then making the ask of others to do their own learning and to really understand the challenges that exist across underrepresented groups. And you know, when I'm speaking and telling my story, trying to make sure I'm thinking expansively about what that looks like. I think, you know, more broadly, when I think about the work I've done from an enterprise perspective within Wells Fargo in particular, whether it's, you know, leading a resource group or helping with business councils, it's really supporting an infrastructure that supports inclusion and equity. And that's important, as is collaboration across all the various underrepresented groups. So hopefully we can be stronger allies for one another and do better when we all do better. For me, when I moved to Wells Fargo, it was really important to me. I had looked at the history of the company. I'd worked with some of the people in the business and had come out to them. And that whole experience for me really solidified my movement into the company and feeling like it was a good place for me. Because that mattered to me, it was an impetus for me becoming involved and really wanting to help do that work from an infrastructure perspective to contribute to that leadership of the company itself, to make sure we were continuing to participate in the right way, even external to our four walls, and to make sure our leaders were thinking about the issues and concerns that impact the community, you know, not just our employees, but obviously also our customers, in our communities that are outside of the company extensively. On an individual level, I think supporting LBT individuals is also really important. So engaging in some mentoring of others in LGBTQ specific programs, and really looking at how I can engage and help support programming like this, which is really critical, right? To see others and to have the benefit to think about these things early in careers. And I'm so grateful that there are forums like this and with other organizations. You know, I'm always happy to share with others what my experiences have been to hopefully help them find their voice, find some comfort in being authentic in the workplace, which is not always easy. Hopefully it's a lot easier today. I think it is than it was a number of years ago. But it's still hard, and it depends on where you are and what company you're in, right? How maybe comfortable you feel about that. And I would say I would also just focus on talking to other individuals who maybe have that interest in engaging in some of that infrastructure work or leadership with respect to community issues, to really think about how they can engage in that and use it as an opportunity to develop in a different way in their career. I know, you know, those opportunities, when I've taken them, have helped me hone both professional and personal skills that have been really, really beneficial as I've sort of navigated then other opportunities in the day job. And so, you know, making sure that people are thinking about that as part of their own career path, I think is important.
Can I take a to respond to that, actually, because it actually might be a good segue to our next question, honestly, or at least what I think we had planned as our next question. Jordan, do you want to maybe ask the next question? And then I would love to jump in and respond to that if I could.
Sure. The next question was, what do you perceive as the barriers to moving more LBT women into senior leadership, and how can we address those?
Good prompt, Emily. Totally unplanned, but good prompt, and props to the St. Louis background. I'm also a Midwesterner at heart. Grew up in Wisconsin and relocated from Chicago just a couple years ago. So I feel you. I'm glad you asked this question, actually. I'm very glad. One of the, I mentioned that sort of 20 years of experience in trying to tackle these things in the workplace. And so I've tried just about everything I could think of in terms of identifying where the gaps are and sort of the pipelines, both bringing talent in and making that talent successful once it's here. And one of the fights I'm most passionate about fighting these days is I think there was a period of time, at least from my perspective, where there was an incredible focus on, look, these numbers are small, right? Numbers of people who are self-identified in these communities, whether it's Black, whether it's LGBTQ, they are very small numbers. And oftentimes, in addition to the many burdens of being parts of those communities in corporate America, broadly corporate America, is you also get additional burden to help fix that problem, right? I can't tell you how many times my wife and I, married at the same company with kids, we were asked to go to every single, visibility event, essentially. And it became hard to feel like we were meeting our obligations to progress our careers and check that next box, because we were spending so much time on these efforts that we're passionate about. Anyway, so there was a push for a period of time of how do we leverage intersectionality, how do we leverage allyship to increase the energy and the numbers around these efforts so self-identified folks aren't being so burdened. I have started to flip my thinking a little bit, actually. Not that allyship and intersectionality aren't critically important and serve incredible value, and I've been thrilled to see how much those have become a focus in many of these conversations. But I think ultimately, to be authentic, to be empathetic, to find the pockets of talent and be able to speak in ways that kind of resonate to that and make people truly feel seen and heard and comfortable, I think you have to have the people out there that have actually lived those stories to a certain extent and be able to have them more closely connected to those efforts, which means leading, BRGs or ERGs or leading recruiting efforts. So my challenge now to leadership that I encounter is, hey, you know what? I'm going to spend 25% of my time on this kind of stuff because I care about it. It's the right thing to do. I'm good at it. We're going to make it better. I get the problems. I've been in it for a long time. And guess what? That's not going to be the thing that keeps me from getting the next promotion. It's going to be the thing that gets me the next promotion. And I'm having that conversation actively and loudly, and have been with lots of friends who are feeling the same thing. So I have seen the same thing you have seen, and it's not okay. And it's at least one of my current crusades.
And I would just add to that, I think there is an aspect of leadership of an ERG. It gives you a lot of opportunity to develop transferable skills and skills that you may not have in your day-to-day responsibilities. For me, my experience was that when I took on that role, I talked very specifically with my manager and with other leaders within our group about what does this mean for me? What does it mean from a time commitment, Jen, to your point, which I think is really important, but also what are the expectations? How does this get woven into my sort of annual expectations of what I'm delivering on for the company, as part of my overall responsibility and role? And then, how can I speak about those experiences? And I have to tell you, particularly as I went through my last round of discussions for a promotion, more than half of the examples I talked about came directly out of ERG leadership. But I had done a fair amount of work and prep to make sure that that was showcased and those transferable skills were sort of brought forward, because they're really important to be able to demonstrate, especially if you want to move into something like a role where you're managing people and you haven't maybe done that in the business, but you've done it as part of an ERG. It's a great opportunity to showcase different skills about navigating, whether it's conflict and personality or taking care of, strategic thinking and budgeting. Lots of that is there. But I do think having those discussions as you are taking on that leadership or in that leadership role to make sure there's an understanding of what you're bringing to the company is really important.
Great, thank you. Juliette Marie, do you have any other thoughts on how we can combat the barriers to LGBT women moving into leadership positions?
Sure. Yes, I think I heard a bit of talk about the importance of allies. They are incredibly important in bringing about change and increasing leadership. But another important thing is mentorship. You know, everyone isn't born with all the right leadership skills, but they can be developed. And I think that's where mentors play an incredibly important role. I mentor a lot of women here in the Bay Area about how to get on boards of directors. And we literally go through the process and of being groomed and developed as a future member of a board of directors. And they always come to me with this sense of, am I really ready to sit on a board? And I said, men don't think that way. They never say, am I really ready to be CEO? Am I really ready to be president? Am I really ready to be in a boardroom? And so I say usually the first mentoring session is, you are ready. And we just need to find you a board seat. And I think that's the role. That's why it's very important to seek out mentors and to be mentors.
Yeah, imposter syndrome is real. And we could probably have an entire conference on that topic, right? As is similarity bias. And when you talk about allyship, I mean, it shows up in really meaningful ways when you have people who've sort of done the work to recognize their own similarity bias and who intentionally look to open the door a bit wider than maybe they traditionally did. And to do that in a way that invites people to be open and authentic as they move through their career. It's a great point, Juliette Marie.
Yeah. I'm going to mention it just because I don't know if I have some super secret power or something, but I see another hand raised.
Yes, nobody gets that. Yeah, and thank you for keeping me accountable for the hand raising. Oh yeah, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, that's funny. So I was on this topic of the advancement. I personally, I know that when I became the co-chair of our Pride Alliance, one of the selling points, right, from executive leadership and other members of the Alliance board was, this will actually help you, right? This is, make sure you're demonstrating to people that your leadership is there, and then make sure you use your feedback periods to explain the ways that you have been put in front of people, things like that. I know someone else who's a co-chair of our Pride Alliance who has been promoted, right? Who's actually switched departments at one point and been promoted. So there's a part of this that I wonder, what I find in my, I call it like my day job versus my extracurriculars, right? In my day job, what will happen is what I call water the plant syndrome, right? Whoever the only chick in the department is like, oh, by the way, would you water that plant for me? Or, oh, could you order the food for us, right? And is some of the answer saying, no, you can do that, I have these other projects going on, while still also focusing on your, we have our Multicultural Alliance, we have our Pride Alliance, we have issues of intersectionality that I personally am passionate about and trying to address. We have our Veterans Alliance. And I sometimes wonder if, depending on the type of alliance you lead, whether or not it doesn't affect you, and does this affect our male counterparts as much as it affects us?
It's a fascinating question.
Or a statement, not a question. I don't know.
So there are two things I want to respond to. One is I want to just reiterate and echo a lot of what Tamara said around. I think it's still important that we take these roles, but I think it's important that we are clear about why we're doing it. We're clear about the value we see in adding it, and we're constantly staying sort of in sync with folks who are our mentors and our development champions and all that on the value that's driving and why that was sort of a good choice. So I want to echo that wholeheartedly. And then a little bit of something that I thought I heard you say was maybe a fear of saying no, or a difficulty saying no, and sort of prioritizing those things above other things. And how do you kind of make those choices and think about the consequences? Or implications, I could say. Consequences kind of automatically sounds negative. It's real. Like I feel you. I have been there and dealt with that and continue to daily. And I think I hadn't thought about whether certain groups experienced it more or less necessarily, but I think in general, those of us in underrepresented communities who are kind of fighting these fights and living them on the front lines day to day feel that burden of not wanting to say no, either because we really do care and we want it to be important, or because we worry about the consequences of saying it. And so I think the key thing to do there is try to lean on having a clear sense of the thing you are trying to accomplish and what you are sort of uniquely positioned to do with that thing, like why that is your thing. And it kind of helps answer for you why those other things aren't your thing. And, you know, do your best to go find homes for those things if you're worried about them being neglected and underinvested in. But the kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts, or like, I'd rather do one thing and kill that one thing and like have clarity of vision and focus on that one thing than do 8 things not so great. is sort of the way I have tried to approach those situations, and just build up my network of people who I can try to you know, get to take on those things for me, and find development opportunities for my people in those things, and find sort of passion projects for other people to take over in those things and let them flourish with someone else.
Yeah, I think the saying no piece and figuring out when to delegate, those are both really critical skills, especially if you're taking on a lot of different areas of responsibility. The water the plant syndrome, right? Or the who's going to load the dishwasher syndrome, as it was known back in my office days. You know, I think there's some opportunity for education there, as well as saying no, right? About how do we make choices? And it can really instigate a broader conversation about the bias that people naturally have for you know, who they see fulfilling certain roles, and whether it's, let's figure out, you know, who's in the office, or we do a rotating schedule so everybody gets some responsibility, or it's just, no, I can't do it. But, you know, do you want to talk about who it can be delegated to? Happy to participate in that conversation. I mean, it seems like sometimes those conversations just give you a little bit more opportunity to further the education. I'll say it that way, along with making sure that you're crisp and clear on, you know, what you can do, what you want to stay focused on and accomplish.
Awesome. I saw another hand raised. Sammy, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, hi. I actually have a specific questions for Julia Marie, if that's all right, because it's crypto related. Women in crypto. So I'm in the arts and culture sector, and so I've been learning about crypto art for the past year. And we have come across artists who are not comfortable appearing in showing their real face in events, because they have, you know, through Twitter or through other channels, they have, sorry, this is my cat. They have been harassed, or, you know, in other ways been bullied because people have realized that they're women. And so in my experience, I haven't come across hostile or aggressive situations, but I at the end of my MBA, I do hope to work in crypto and in some capacity. And so I'm wondering if you, just through your experience dealing with these companies, which projects have you found to be a better culture or a better environment? Because even some that are where there are women in leadership, not all women are like you. They're not people who send down the elevator, they close the door behind them. And so I thought it would be very nice to hear from you directly.
Great, thank you. I love crypto and blockchain, and live it every day. And that's what I teach in Berlin at the business school, cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. And I mentor entrepreneurs in Switzerland at CV Labs, which is an accelerator program for blockchain technology application. And I'm glad you talked about your potential career. There are some cryptocurrency companies and here in Silicon Valley and in Switzerland that are so diverse and inclusive. There's one company called Definity, and Dominic, I know him. Dominic is the CEO of Definity, and he has one of the most diverse cryptocurrency companies in the world. Definity is rebuilding the internet. If you can imagine a company rebuilding the internet. Dominic has a 20-year plan to rebuild the internet on blockchain technology using cryptocurrency. And if you want to explore a career with Definity, I'll be more than happy to connect you with Dominic and others on the team because I know them quite well. I've been working with them for the past 5 years, getting millions of dollars in investments for them.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
All right, I think we have time for one final Q&A question if there is one. So who wants to ask the final, no pressure question? Did I scare you all away? Okay, let me just wrap up with, oh, sorry, we have one question from Kat. Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, I'm Kat, pronouns she, they. Thanks for all your time today. Since you mentioned no pressure, I thought we should end with a kind of fun question. So hopefully all of you know who like Bill Nye the Science Guy is. I think he's pretty rad. One of the things I learned from him was everybody knows one thing that you don't. So if all of our presenters could say one fascinating thing that they know that we might not know, I would love to hear it.
That's a really
That
good
is
question.
actually a lot of pressure. I just want to say that.
I mean, my other question is normally, what would you ask your younger self? And I feel like that one's just a little bit more pressure, but dealer's choice, I guess. Pick your favorite.
Interesting.
What's one thing that I know that maybe some people don't? I know what the going dowry rate was in Botswana, South Africa, circa 1996.
Nice.
I spent a summer there, and it was offered to my host family several times.
Since we're throwing back, so now I don't feel quite so bad, Jen, about throwing back to what I know, which was in the year 1994, and I think for a couple of years thereafter, the state of Nevada did not have a law school. I had to actually leave my home state in order to pursue my graduate degree. And at that time, it was only Alaska and Nevada that did not have law schools.
Well, I will be in the moment. March 2021. March 2021, what we know, or what I think we know, is the coronavirus pandemic has taught us that humanity is more resilient and more compassionate than we ever thought we were.
Love it. Thanks so much, friends.
Thanks, Kat.
Well, I feel like we can't get any better ending to this wonderful conversation than that. So thank you, Juliette, Marie, Jen, and Tamara, and all of the questions that we had for this conversation. I think it was a great way to start off this conference. I hope that you all will continue to come back for years to come. And I want to say we will wrap up shortly and move to the next block of sessions. We have the parent and professional or professional parent panel, as well as the drop-in networking sessions. So for the drop-ins, you can literally drop yourself into any of the sessions that you want. There's different topics, and we have some staff and organizing members there to kind of get the conversation going. So again, Jen, Juliette, Marie, Tamara, this was great. I really enjoyed this. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you in the next session. Have a great day.
I highly recommend the next session. I know a couple people on the panel. They're incredible. So enjoy and please attend.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.